Okay, hello everyone. So you are viewing the lecture on uh, context and content analysis in the course of readings in Philippine history. Okay, so our objectives for this lecture is to gain an understanding and comprehension on how to conduct context and content analysis. So, what do we mean when we say we are conducting content and context analysis? So, in doing this, we ensure that the source and the information it contains is credible and logical. So, meaning, uh, in this type of analysis, we make sure that what we are reading, okay, so that the information contained in what we are reading can be used and can be determined, or we can say that that information is truthful, okay, or uh, it is usable basically. Okay, so in context analysis we determine whether the source is credible. So can we rely on that source for valid information? Okay? Because not all sources are credible. This is true in historical studies. This is true in the present time. Okay? Because especially now in an age where information can be readily shared to whoever, okay, in different means or different media. Okay, not all sources are credible. Okay, so a common example of this is what we refer to as yung mga fake news. Okay, yung mga troll posts. All right, those are examples of sources that are not credible in the sense na they do not share reliable information, or strictly speaking, the information that they are sharing is false or is not true. Okay? So we need to do this. We need to make sure that the source of the information is reliable, trustworthy, he or she is credible to talk about the information he or she is presenting. Okay? Because in the first place, if the person or if the maker of the source is he or herself not credible, then dun pa lang, we should stop reading whatever he or she is presenting, because again, we know for a fact that that person is not credible. Okay. For example, if we know that the source of the post is a verified troller, or a verified sharer of fake news, then we know for a fact that the information he or she is or they are sharing is false. Okay, they can be sarcasm, they can be jokes, again, they can be trolls. Okay, so we do not take their information as something that is true or that is factual. Okay, that's why we need to determine uh, if the source is credible or not. Kasi if we believe readily information that is false, diba, it can lead to disaster. Diba? It can lead to you being harmed. Diba? It can lead to you being fooled, diba? Which will lead uh, to you being in danger, or yun nga, being in harm. So we would like to avoid that. Okay, so we need to establish if the source is credible. So how do we do this? In historical sources, so we look at background of the event. So what was happening at the time, okay, when the source was made. For example, if the source was made in 1572, for example, okay, so what was happening around the time? Okay, so if this was the source that was made, so what was happening around? Okay, what were the events that were ongoing at the time? Okay, so we need this in order to determine if for number one, what what the motive of the writer or the author or the maker of the source is. So oftentimes we can see the purpose of the maker of the source if we look at what was happening around the time. Okay. Next, we look at the background of the author, which refers to the basic information about the author or the maker of the source. For example, who was he or she? What was his or her profession? What was he or she doing at the time the source was made? How old was she or he? Okay, where were they? Okay, etc. etc. So again, this would also determine if uh, he or she is an authority in writing whatever it is that he or she is writing. Okay. Um, for example, our source, our the event is back in martial law. For example, 1970s. Okay. So we came across a primary document or a primary source that contains information during the period. Okay. Now, checking the background of the author is important if to determine whether if that source can be used in studying history or in gaining insights, uh, or if it will lead us to the truth. Because, for example, what if the writer was living in the United States at the time, 1970s, for example, diba? So, okay, so he lived at the time. Okay, so he was existing at the time. He was of mature age, but his or her location would would that make him a credible source of information about the event martial law in the Philippines? Diba? Kasi he was living in the United States. Compare that to a primary source wherein the maker was living actually in Manila at that time. Diba? So we can determine which of the two sources would have more credibility. The one is it the one from the person who was living in the United States or from the person who was living in Manila, 'di ba? Mas credible yung information from the person who was living in Manila. Okay? So it's an example of determining the credibility of the source based on the background of the author. Okay? So another thing that we can consider in determining uh, credibility, okay, is the type of source. What is the type of source? Okay, is it a diary? Is it a newspaper article? Is it a report to the officials? Is it a speech? Is it a painting, etc., etc.? Okay, so we determine this. Uh, well, of course, again to aid in determining the credibility, but more so, it helps in determining why a source was made. Okay, ayan. So why was the source made? Because its type of source basically it already contains the purpose, okay, of that particular source. For example, why do we write newspaper articles? Diba? It's to share information or it's to spread information. Okay? Why do we write reports to our supervisors or to our officials? Okay? So it's we do that in order to help our supervisors or our officials in coming up with decisions. Okay. Why do we write a speech? Whoops, my alarm. Sorry. Sorry for that. Okay. Again, so why do we we make speeches in order to make our policies or our ideas known to others. Okay? So, etc., etc. Why do we make a diary? Diba? It's for us to remember what happened in a particular event. For example, this day was a memorable day. Diba? So, the older generation would write those events in their diaries. Okay? Nowadays, we don't have diaries anymore. What we have what we have are uh, Facebook posts and Instagram posts, 'di ba? You capture moments using the camera by taking photos or 'di ba? And then you post them, okay? The difference between the diary now and the Facebook or Instagram is what we share becomes public, okay? But it also helps in preserving the memories that we have. It also helps preserve uh, the events that we are experiencing or the activities that we are doing that are very memorable. Diba? So, ayun. So, if we determine the type of source, it helps us realize why it was made. What was the purpose? Okay. Later on, when we look into the specific readings, uh, determining the type of source will or determining the purpose can help us in analyzing. Okay? It's a big help in analyzing uh, the source itself. Okay. Now, in content analysis, so we determine whether the information of or in the source is logical. Okay. Why do we do this? We make sure that the information we receive is logical so that our knowledge is based on the truth. Okay? Kasi 'di ba most of the time if we deem that the information that was shared to us was illogical, 'di ba? It's hard to believe, 'di ba? Parang walang sense, 'di ba? If an information does not make sense or if 'di ba, if this if the elements do not add up, 'di ba? If hindi siya logical, it's doubtful for us or it's hard to believe, 'di ba? For the information to be true kasi hindi siya logical. That's why uh one of the simplest analyses that we can do is to determine how logical is the information or how truthful. Okay? So mainly we look in or simply we look into two elements. First, what the main idea is. Second, we look for specific information. Okay? Uh, so in specific information, these are the details. So we look for the details that are present in the source. Okay? Most of the time, the specific information is more important. Okay? Why? It supports and strengthens the main idea. Okay? So it serves as the base. It is the basis. Kumbaga, these are the evidences that would make the main idea truthful. All right. For example, if we say that uh, the Philippines is winning in the battle against COVID, okay? So that's your main idea. That's your main point. Okay? How are you going to support that main idea? Okay, 'di ba kasi if you're going to base it in the present, 'di ba, the Philippines is winning in the battle against COVID, 'di ba, it seems a little bit hard to believe. Okay, unless you provide yung mga specific information, 'di ba? Unless you provide supporting details. Okay, unless you supply you provide, sorry, unless you provide a strong basis to support that we are indeed winning in the battle against COVID. Okay? That's why in reading the sources, it's more important to determine or to look for the specific information because uh, that's what's going to give the main idea strength. Okay? That is what will make your main point truthful. Okay? Um, for example, again, sinabi mo na maganda siya, yung nililigawan mo. For example, sinabi mo, ang ganda-ganda mo. Yeah. Okay. How can you say? What are the details that you can give to support your main idea? Okay, to make it truthful. Di ba kasi yung iba, nambobola lang. Di ba? They're just saying uh, beautiful descriptions just to in order to get what they want. Pero sometimes they are not true, really. May mga sip-sip, ganyan. Okay? Alright, so that's why it's important na if you want to present an idea or if you want to share an idea, you have to give specifics, you have to give details because that is what's going to make your idea logical. Hence, that is what's going to make your idea truthful. Okay? Because you have provided basis, you have provided details, you have provided evidences. Okay? So to summarize, so in context analysis, we determine is the source credible. Okay? So we look for the credibility of the source. So we look at the event. Okay? We look at the background of the author. Who was he or she? Okay? What was the type of source made? Okay? In content analysis, we determine if the information is logical. Right? Is it truthful? How can we believe in the information that was presented? Okay? So we look for the main idea and more importantly, we look for the specific information. All right? Okay, so again, if you have clarifications or questions, please feel free to contact me through the contact details presented or shared in the first lecture video. Okay, so with that, see you and stay safe.